All right, hello, and I want to welcome Kristin Fontana to the Butterfly Effect, and she's an evolutionary astrologer, and I'm so excited for her to be here and sharing her gifts with everybody. So welcome.
Thanks, Karissa. Thank you.
So I would love for you to share a little bit about what got you on the path of astrology and where you were before you got on this path.
It was quite a journey. I was born into a very traditional family and had a very traditional upbringing, religious included. And so this was definitely not discussed at my house growing up. In fact, if I was caught reading an astrology forecast, I probably would have been in a lot of trouble. But anyway, it was church on Sundays and sometimes more than once in a week. And I led a very traditional life and went to UCLA and was pre-med in college and thought I wanted to work in the area of medicine, which I did actually for many years in my 20s. And then I hit my Saturn return in my late 20s, which a lot of people know about, 28, 29 years old. And it is a big time in our life to really take seriously what it is that we're doing for the rest of our life. Saturn is all about time and maturation and this feeling of wanting to make something more of our life. It's not this light and passing energy. It's very high pressure. It's very pressing in a way. And so if anybody's been not living their nature or not actualizing the path that they want to be, or not in a relationship that reflects who they are, it's a big time where breakups happen, career shifts occur. And I was always very into self-help and kind of spiritual things in general, I should say. I read a lot of Joseph Campbell, famous mythologist, Joseph Campbell. In fact, he was probably the one that started me down this very alternative path of sorts because it kept leading me to different authors. And at some point in my late 20s, my life was just not the life that I imagined for myself. In fact, I remember asking myself, is this all there is? I was in corporate America. I was making great money. I was miserable. I was empty. I felt like this can't be all there is. I had a lot to be thankful for in my life at that time, but I felt this heavy energy that wouldn't let up. I didn't even know what a Saturn return was then. That's how little I knew about astrology. And so from around my late 20s until the time I turned 33, I was just on this pursuit to figure out why I was here. I knew it was more than working in hospitals or in the medicine world. And I even was taking personality tests. I went to see a therapist. I'm miserable. What's going on? And I'll tell you the funny thing. We didn't talk about this before, but it's been a long time. I think since I've even thought this, I remembered it. But the thing that led me to an astrologer's office or to get a reading was I started reflecting about my life, and every guy I'd ever dated was a Gemini.
Really?
Yeah. And I was a Sagittarius. So there's a kind of an opposites attract situation here. Well, they never worked out for me. So that was one of my questions for the astrologer. Like, what is going on? Why do I keep attracting this particular type of person? There must be something to it. So that's kind of what prompted my interest in astrology, because I kept attracting a certain type of person.
Yeah.
And so what I did find and discover really later, I would say, is that the Gemini energy was fun. It was curious. It was, we were always going here, there, and everywhere, but it kind of kept me on the surface. Those kinds of relationships were keeping me more on the surface. And I'm not saying all Geminis are like that, but the nature of the ones I was attracting were like that. They would change their mind like the wind, Yeah. And so it kept me from avoiding my own depths, my own inner depths. And again, there's plenty of evolved Geminis, but the ones that I was attracting at the time were not necessarily on the path that I needed to be on for myself. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, from my late 20s till the time I was 33, I was just on this really deep pursuit of my truth. And finally, I was on my knees, I think praying every night, I think, God, show me what else I'm supposed to be doing. I mean, I was just begging for it.
Yeah.
And what was going on in my life at this time was that a Pluto transit, which moves very slowly, was just rocking back and forth over some planets in my chart. It was like having the universe's thumb on me all the time, this deep psychological pressure, so intense. And I had an astrologer talk to me about what was going on and recommended some books, etc. In fact, she was even teaching me a little astrology on my lunch time when I was working in LA at one of the major hospitals there. I would meet her at the farmer's market, and there was a classroom, and she'd start writing some astrology on this whiteboard and teach me. You know, it was this awesome break from my mainstream job that was full of pressure. But at 33, I met my teacher, my greatest life teacher, and he was the author of the book Pluto, The Evolutionary Journey of the Soul, which were these big transits I was having. I was a little bit afraid of meeting him because the energy was so intense. And I was afraid because I knew that when I walked through the door, I couldn't unwalk through it. I had this inner sense that something was calling me, deeper into my journey. And I knew unconsciously, and probably consciously too, that my soul would have to confront all of the fears that I had about sort of coming out of hiding. And coming out of hiding for me was just, leaving this mainstream reality and just following a path that reflects my own unique individuality. And the fear of judgment that went along with it. Would I be able to survive? How would I be able to support a life for myself as an astrologer? But the day that I walked into that lecture was Easter Sunday. And, all my life, remember, I was going to church on Sunday, especially on Easter Sunday. Yeah. And here I was in an astrology conference. And in Easter Sunday, it's the day of death and rebirth. And Pluto is a planet of death and rebirth. It's about eliminating the things in our life that don't serve us. And when it's in proximity to a personal planet, we feel it. There's really no relief until it leaves, leaves the area for a while. I mean, it takes probably a year and a half to come through its most powerful points when it's making a pass to a personal planet. 3 years total, but a year and a half when it's really right there. And there really doesn't feel like there's a lot of relief. But it's there because you've called it in. Your soul has called it in. The timing is right. And we're all responsible for what we create, including the timing of these trends that occur in our life. And so I did feel, after years of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I needed to walk in the door of that lecture hall. And at that point even, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't even know why I was there. I just wanted someone to tell me why I was there. I'd been searching for, years. Yeah. And there was a packed house, and I didn't know anybody there. I just felt, I literally flew to this conference from LA to Denver. I didn't know anybody. And a lot of free spirits, a lot of alternative people, and I'm there in my little pantsuit, my business pantsuit from my corporate job. And it got really quiet. You could have heard a pin drop a lot because of the respect that this particular astrologer had. Or the people have this respect for him. His name's Jeff Green. He wrote, he said, Pluto, the Evolutionary Journey of the Soul. And he brought this body of work here to this planet. And it's a paradigm that allows you to uncover the journey for anybody, the past that led up to this life, the current life purpose, and why, and where it is that your soul's headed. Literally a paradigm that allows you to track that for any soul in question. And as soon as he said good morning, I knew I was home. That was it. I just heard his voice, and the whole hour or hour and a half of his talk was about Saturn. Saturn is about the structural nature of our consciousness, how we are conditioned by our culture. It has to do with how we dedicate our life and our time. It connects to themes like regret and guilt and remorse on a negative side, but it also connects to what secures our path. How it's a structural nature of how we commit our soul in any space, in essence. It's like when you decide to be a doctor, or you decide to be a healer, or you are bringing that Saturn element to your life and saying, this is what I want to spend my time doing. And so what a lot of the lecture was really about the nature of our conditioning and how our society influences our choices. And that a lot of people are walking around the world not living their natural essence or their natural way in the world. They're making choices that are reflected or due to their own conditioning, for fear of being judged, perhaps, a resistance for all sorts of reasons, whether it's something that maybe the collective doesn't support wholeheartedly. So he spoke a lot about the patriarchal influence for thousands of years and this male-dominated reality that we've all been a part of, and that he compared that to what natural law looks like when everything's in balance. Matriarchal principles is when women and men have equal roles in a tribe. Things are more fair and balanced. And that over time, especially with women, and this is true too with men's emotional bodies, but things have been repressed so much to the degree that things have become way out of balance. And you can see that when a man is getting paid more for the same job as a woman, and she's forced to take less. You can see it when you look at a governmental structure, and most of the people in the room are men, for example, or in a corporate reality, whatever it might be. So the scales have become gravely imbalanced. And so when he was talking about Saturn in this way, this patriarchal overlay that we've all been subjected to, and for lifetimes people have had to make choices for survival. Like, someone's not going to say, oh, I want to be a tarot reader if their head's going to be lopped off for it, right? You're going to hide behind that desire to be a tarot reader or a healer or an astrologer or a midwife. You might hide behind these natural capacities if you think your survival's on the line. And for thousands of years, this has been true because it's not been accepted. And so I really my heart just leapt out when hearing these teachings, these natural teachings and reminding us all of what it's like to live when natural law is operating. When you're living in a tribe and everybody has a role, right? The barter system, everything is that natural give and that natural receiving that happens. And so he really spoke to my soul, and I don't even remember so much the astrology of that talk, but what it felt like to be reminded of the things of our time that were more natural, and the things that I feel that were designed to be. It's what man and humans have done with choices. I would say we're all making choices every day, and a lot of the planet's suffering because of a lot of those choices, right? Gaia, this planet, Mother Earth, suffering because of a lot of choices that people make, what they do with our planet. So that's an example. And that really just, as soon as I heard this message, where do I sign up? Was literally, I had no idea I wanted to be an astrologer that moment. But all those years were leading up to 33 years old on Easter Sunday. That was 20 years ago. So here I am, still doing astrology.
Oh, that's awesome. And I love your heart and your passion for what you're doing, and seeing people like you and in your gifts, using your gift. It excites me. And, that's really what this is about for me, supporting people and getting back to who they are at their core and letting them find themselves and get to know themselves. And I really felt your heart speaking through you sharing a lot of that stuff. And it just so happens I can relate to a lot of the things so far. And I know you mentioned, you saw that I was in my Saturn return. And also, I've saw a pattern in relationships as well, but mine has happened to be with Taurus. Something that I recognized before I even realized astrology was real, and how much you could really get to know about yourself through this. So I love it. And I know you're passionate about the planets and how they're affecting us. So I would love for you to share a little bit about that, because we're going through a lot of shifts happening in the world. A lot of people, I think, are awakening. I've experienced that, and I would love for you
Yeah,
to.
we're reaching a limit to what we can handle as a planet, as a culture, within various countries. Things are reaching extremes, and it takes an extreme to counteract an extreme, ultimately. And we have this incredibly rare, historic stellium of planets that have just combined in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, which I was just talking about: repression, fear, resistance. It's like history, not her story, but his story. And the old way of doing things is really Saturn. And with all these planets in Capricorn, it also suggests that a new chapter is initiating. And I know that because it's been.
You kind of froze a little bit, so
Yeah.
I want to restate what you just said.
Okay.
It might have been really important to share.
Okay. So Aquarius has nothing to do what's been, what has been. It has everything to do with what shall be, what can be. And the Aquarius energy, anywhere that it is in your chart, if you've got planets in Aquarius, planets in the 11th house, which you have, Karissa, you have a couple really important planets in the 11th house. I'm going to talk to you about that. But anything that, you know, in your own chart, you're going to be influenced by this in some way. And you can tell by the nature of where these planets are falling in your chart. But that, in particular, Saturn will be shifting into the sign of Aquarius the end of March. And again, it's just been part of this massive stellium of planets: Pluto, Saturn, Sun, Mercury, the asteroid Ceres, the south node of the moon, and Jupiter, all in Capricorn. I mean, that is just male domination to the max. It's just, it's like, you know, absolutely, you can look at it. There's so many countries now that have, the people have actually voted in very nationalistic type of people. And the sort of us versus them mentality, right? Our God's better than your God, or our party's better than your party. And it creates this crazy divide. So that can only last for so long, right? You can only really keep that in place for so long before somebody's going to rebel or revolt. You know, naturally for all humans, we want what's fair, right, and balanced. And so end of March until the beginning of July, Saturn will be in Aquarius, which is about changing what's been, radically changing it if necessary. And then it will shift back into Capricorn until the middle of December. And then in next year, 2021, Saturn will be in the sign of Aquarius the entire year and beyond. Some of these other planets, Pluto in a few years will be shifting into Aquarius as well. The world's just not going to look anything like it does today, and for good reason. So anyway, what is important for everybody who's listening to kind of feel right now is there's a high degree of pressure for you to follow what it is that your soul came here to do yourself. Saturn came in front of Pluto and it says, hey soul, it's speaking to all of us individually. It's speaking to us in how we take care of our planet. It's speaking to us in how we spend our time and how we spend our time with the ones we love. And so it's really about taking your journey seriously and taking responsibility for what it is that your soul came here to do. It can create this feeling of running out of time as well, which nobody likes that feeling. Even for someone in a first Saturn return like you, Karissa, people can feel that way. And then it makes you want to maximize your time, to make every morsel of it matter. And I do remember the feeling at my Saturn return. I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm getting old. I got to figure this out. And that was 20 years ago. But it does create this feeling of not wanting to waste a moment. And so if you're feeling that gravity, anyone who's listening, there's a good reason for it. So it forces you into a state of reflection to think more deeply about your journey and really asking yourself, what is about what is it about where I've been and who I am now that I want to bring into my future? It's not about really stepping totally away from everything you've been doing. It's just about bringing the root of who you are, and your own soul center forward, but letting all the old clothing fall away, slipping out of the old clothing, the stuff that binds, the resistance, the fear, anything you've collected that doesn't define you, you want to be rid of. And of course, it's not going to happen overnight. It's this slow, progressive change. But there will be pressure to move away from the past, the part of the past that doesn't support the future and where your soul wants to go. It doesn't support your liberation. It's kind of like when you're going on a trip and you overpack, and then you got to lug everything around. It's just the worst feeling. And then you get back and you're like, I didn't even wear half of what I packed. This is just crazy. You're really just, why did I do that? And of course, we all like options, but it's that same kind of feeling of lugging around something that you don't need to. What do I really need? What's gonna reflect my essence the most? And what are the who are the people that are going to be there to support me on my journey? Who loves me no matter what? And so big choices are being made in terms of relationships. Is this a relationship that I feel like, are we on the same path here, on the same track? Are we at the same place? Are they going to judge me if I want to go do this or that? Are they going to be celebrating the changes that are happening in me? These are big choices. These are hard choices, especially for people that have been married for a long time.
Yeah.
Or even being in jobs and careers where you just feel like you can't do it another day. And you know that there's something more for you out there. And so I wanted to mention something for you in your chart. You've got the moon and Venus both in Cancer in the 11th house. The 11th house is an Aquarius house. It's about connecting with others of like mind. It's about finding your people, finding your tribe. It's really about being a messenger through the internet or through some technological means, which you are. And Cancer connects to women, but it also connects to emotion. So it can be men and women, but really talking about matters of the heart, matters of the emotional part of living. Because when we don't feel good, it makes a difference. So it's about, how can I heal these broken parts and pieces of my past? And how can I empower myself to be all that I know I came here to be? And that's what you're doing. And it's just perfect to have Venus and the moon in this position because they're the only two feminine planets we have in our solar system. The rest are considered male. And so it suggests that, you're a woman, that you're putting yourself in a place where you can help support others who want to make a difference in their own unique way. You're supporting the individuality of others, and you're bringing everybody together in a forum that allows for that. And the people that are going to be attracted to this work, to your work, are people that want to make some transformational changes in their own life. Something's not working for them. So do you have any questions about your chart or anything else about what's coming in 2020?
Yeah, well, so I think for me, I really want, so there's going to be new people on their journeys that are watching this. Is there anything that you have to say to people who are new to this journey? I want to support exactly what you said. I'm here to support people in transformation, loving, accepting themselves, and finding their unique gifts and tapping into, themselves emotionally and being okay with who they are. Just what ways, for somebody who is not in tune with astrology, what are some things that you could share with them that this could support them within their journey? Is there anything?
I'll give you a metaphor for this because this doesn't require any astrology, but everybody can relate to it. When you're out in the world and you're not allowing your essence to emit, You are sort of, I use the expression nip and tuck, it's like you're just holding things in, and there's a fear of what people will think of you.
Yeah.
If you look a certain way, if you talk a certain way, if you believe something that someone may not be in alignment with, there's this fear around, again, judgment. What will people think of me? And this need to be accepted. And I know this because the hardest thing, for most people, when they're stepping into their soul shoes, I like to say, is to hear something negative right after they've taken some steps forward. I know 20 years ago I started writing weekly forecasts, and I got an email from somebody who didn't understand what I was saying, or just wasn't very kind, put it that way. And it like brought me to my knees, right? Because I just put my whole soul into this forecast. And I know now that at that time it was a test, because anytime a soul is going to take 2 steps forward, and I was into the light of who they are, you're casting a greater shadow at the same time. There's always going to be something that's going to try and undermine you when you make those 2 steps forward. You have to be prepared for it. And then it becomes an opportunity for you to get strong in yourself, to strengthen yourself, to not attach what somebody else is saying, knowing that your heart was pure to try and help somebody, say, in that moment. But it reminds me of when you're in a car a little bit too, in terms of just stepping out into the world in a new way, in a way that feels organic and authentic and natural to who you are. And that's when you're in the car and you're listening to the radio and you start pulling away from your town and static starts to show up on the signal, right? That static can happen when we're out in the world and we're not being true to who we are. We're not being authentic. We start to get static on our signal. And then people don't receive us in a clear or pure way. They're a little confused about who we are, or they're not sure what to do with us, whatever it might be. And so when you make your way back home from wherever you've been journeying, say you've got lost on the path, right? You've hidden from who you are. And when you start making your way back home to yourself, just like when you're coming back from a trip and that station that you love is playing the music that you love, closer you get back to home or back home to yourself, the more the static falls away from the signal, and you can hear that song. It's like clear as a bell. And when they're playing your favorite song, there's nothing better. You just crank it up, right? And so the key is it's like finding your own tuning fork, in a sense. Allowing yourself to lean toward what feels natural and that's something that fits for you, that you enjoy. And just finding a way to align with that music that feels like your music. And it is so true that when you can move into that song, or you can harmonize with that music freely, without resistance or fear, you become so attractive to the world naturally, like you just do. People want to be closer to you. They want to know you because you don't care what anybody else thinks. You're just harmonizing with your own soul. And it is the most attractive thing anybody can embody. You've seen it for yourself. Someone walking down the street, purple hair, 10 piercings, whatever it is, and they don't care who's watching or looking. They're completely happy just being who they are. It's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
So I would just encourage people to really reflect now and to find the music within yourself. Find the song that you feel reflects your essence. And if you can't find it, write it. Imagine it, what you want it to sound like. If you want to change your own song, you are the author of that. And I do feel like this time now, this 2020, is about deconstructing the old and rebirthing into the new, rising up from the ashes of old if necessary, and being away with whatever does not reflect who you are naturally.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was
You're
beautiful.
welcome.
And then I know you don't have too much longer, but if there's anything in my chart that you see that that would be something neat for everybody to hear, how like things play a role, in our lives, by the positions of the planets, you could share whatever you see that might sound interesting to people.
Sure. I mean, the most important, or I would say the most valuable piece of having a reading, an astrological reading, is to feel validated by what you're feeling, right? Your experience. When I got a reading for the first time and I'd been under such pressure with these intense transits, I literally felt like I was dying, not to sound dramatic. It was that intense. Like I didn't even know who I was anymore. Like I knew something big was coming and something big came. It didn't happen overnight. But for an astrologer to tell me what was happening who didn't even know me, it was like, oh, thank God, like, oh, that's what it is, right? It's like, just thank you. At least I know what it is. I knew that it wasn't going to go away anytime soon, but at least I knew what it was. And for you, what is so amazing, at your Saturn return already, you were just at the very beginning. It's happened much sooner for you than for me because I had so much conditioning to deal with, is that Uranus has been rocking back and forth over your Mars. You have Mars in Taurus. That's why you kept attracting Taurian men. Mars is a planet of action and desire and instinct. And Uranus came over that point already. It's like being plugged into something. It's like having this great idea. I want to bring community together. I want to help people. I want to brainstorm with others, or I want to share. I want everyone to share their gifts and, like pay it forward. Dandelion in the wind, pebble in the pond. That's what I want to do. I want to be a transmitter of truth. I want to be a transmitter of love. I want to be a transmitter of emotion and community. And that's what you've done. Uranus has not been here in 84 years. And here you are, 28, 29. It will not be here again for you in this lifetime. But it has unlocked something in you that will remain open. And that's what's so powerful about this transit for you. It's reaching the highest point in your chart, like midnight on a clock. It's just about to step into your house of career. And as you blossom into the world and as you make your climb and do what you feel your soul has come here to do, honoring that responsibility that you have to reach and to teach and to connect with others, it will be the current, the energetic current that carries you forward. It is sextiling your Venus right now. Venus has to do with relationships. It has to do with what you value. And it's really allowing you to align with what you value and to align with others who value the same things. So it's a very special energy right now that you have. And it's going to allow you also to totally change your signal in whatever way you choose to change it. And so that's a very liberating kind of experience when Uranus is operating in this way. On the one hand, it's very intense. It's right on your Mars. I can't think of anything more powerful. It literally is like being plugged into something. And yet it's forming these beautifully supportive aspects in other directions that allows you to really move with speed. It's like a catalyst for change in your life and allowing you to change and improve and enhance the lives of other people too with the work that you're doing. So I just love it when I see a woman moving into her Saturn return, and men too. Nothing against the men, but women have really, it's been quite a road for thousands of years. So anytime I see a woman really stepping into her strengths and to her power, really recovering the voice that you inherently have to make a difference in the world, nothing makes me happier, I have to say. So bravo, and thank you for creating this summit and this forum to reach others with your message and the messages of others that you have here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here and, being in your work and doing your soul's calling. It's been amazing being able to connect with you and experience you in your work. And yeah, I I appreciate what this journey has done for me, and that's why it's it's been a beautiful experience, and I want
Mhm.
that for other people, and I want them to get to know who they are. So thank you for being a vessel for that.
Well, I don't know how much you've shared with the listeners about your journey, but from what I know about your journey, you've already been through some major transformational turns. And I think what's most important is when people have had challenging lives in whatever form or fashion that is. My challenge was going from a very traditional, reserved reality and breaking out of that mold, uh, and wondering what all those relationships would become, right? That was my challenge. And there was a lot of very difficult turns and choices I had to make, knowing that I had to make them. You had your own journey, different than mine, but incredibly difficult turns that you had to make, that made you who you are today. And so you have a story to tell. And you have, what I love about your story and my story, and there's a lot I haven't said, but it is that we can sit here and say, if I can do it, you can do it, right? You now know that you did it, and you've been in hard places. You've been in places where you didn't know if you could, right? And so it's those stories that actually empower people, because they know that you've been there. And when people know that I've been there, if I share a little piece of my path, understanding their plight, there's power in that, right? It's power in being on the journey in a way that is just dramatically different than where you find yourself now.
Yes.
It allows people to, you have compassion for where they are, knowing what they're feeling because you've been there. And there's a lot of power in that. So whether it's a health crisis or, a big breakup with someone, a divorce, getting fired from a job, I mean, there's just so many stories. And so anyway, you've made some massive turns in your life, and welcome to your new chapter, Karissa. And for everybody listening, welcome to your new chapter.
Yes. I want to welcome everybody to their new chapter, and I just hope that they receive, as much support that they can from our messages. Really, that's what it's about. What gets my heart going is like, really, like, I have overcame those things, and I do believe that, because I overcame, I'm like, oh, so can you. Like, definitely 100%. And it has given me a understanding for people where they're at. And if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't have that. So even though it was painful, I'm really thankful for it.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to thank you for bringing that up. And I wish, I know that there's so much that is in your journey that I would love to share, but I know you have something to do after this. So thank you so much. And maybe we can share more of your journey at some other point.
I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to offer people or let people know that I have a webinar that I did. It's an hour long that talks about this special Capricorn stellium that occurred January 12th. We also had a pair of eclipses, Christmas night and January 10th, a full moon eclipse in Cancer. Here's some of your planets that really is going to affect us all for the next 6 months. So whatever was occurring in your life, the first 2 weeks, I would say, of January, or the end of December, early January for people, I did a webinar that I want to offer you for free if you're listening today. Just even though it occurred, this big event on the 12th in particular, it's activating really the whole year, but these eclipses are activating the next 6 months. So they will, or the webinar will shine a light further on those things and help you understand more deeply what these energies are all about for you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And everybody who is watching, get connected with Kristin. if you feel called to. She's definitely an amazing source to guide you on your journey. And man, I just appreciate the time that I've spent with you so far. And you're powerful in your purpose. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And lastly, I just wanted to say I do write a weekly forecast that's free for everybody to check out on my website. And so if you're wanting to check out your horoscope, and it changes every week. And so that's something I also offer. I've been offering for 20 years. So
Yes. Yeah. So
right.
thank you so much. Is there anything else that you wanted to share?
I think that's it. Thank you for inviting me to be here. And just want to tell everybody to just go make a difference in the way that your soul intended when you entered this world, because the world needs you.
Yes, it does. We need each other.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Take
you
care.
so much again. And bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Namaste.